In 2007, a school bus carrying 14 middle schoolers disappeared during a routine field trip. No crash, no bodies, no trace. The town called it a tragedy, a freak accident. But 18 years later, I found a bracelet in a thrift store that shouldn't exist. And from that moment on, the silence started to break. Before we start, hit subscribe to help uncover stories they tried to bury. And make sure no name stays forgotten. My name's Claire Wren. I'm 36 now. Grew up in a place called Del Pine, Vermont, the kind of town that felt permanently stuck between seasons. We had one blinking streetlight at the four-way stop, a gas station that doubled as a diner, and houses that peeled in winter and tried again in spring. I moved away after college. Boston, eventually. But I came back when my dad had surgery. I hadn't been home in almost 7 years. The house still smelled like old wood and lemon floor polish, a smell that only comes from years of quiet living. My dad had fallen asleep in his recliner TV, murmuring with the captions on. He looked thinner than I remembered. Older, too. I dropped my bag by the door, pulled a blanket over him, and stepped outside. That's when I noticed the thrift store. It hadn't been there before. A squat little building across from the post office with a crooked sign that read Second Chances. Looked like the kind of place run by retirees who had too many boxes and not enough weekend plans. I figured I'd take a look. The bell above the door jingled sharp when I stepped in. Dust hung in the air like slow-moving smoke. Behind the counter was a woman in her 60s humming along to an old cassette playing Hotel California. "You new in town?" she asked without really looking up. "Returning," I said. "Grew up here." Her head tilted. "Dan Wren's girl." I nodded. "Claire." "Well, I'll be." Like that explained something. She went back to humming. I wandered through chipped mugs, old sweaters, stacks of half-finished puzzles. It felt like memory storage, not a store. And then I saw it, in the glass case near the counter. A silver charm bracelet. 3 charms, a music note, a tiny dog, and the letter J. I froze. That bracelet belonged to Janie Delcourt. She was my best friend in 7th grade. Sat behind me in math, chewed cinnamon gum, worried about her braces. She wore that bracelet every single day. But Janie was one of the kids who never came back. That October morning in 2007, she boarded a bus with 13 other students for a field trip to Bear Hollow Preserve. And none of them ever returned. No crash, no radio call, no wreckage. The news called it a mechanical failure, a misdirection. Search crews blamed the terrain. But within a week, the story faded. The school held a memorial, just names, no photos. And then it was done. People stopped talking. But I hadn't forgotten, because I was supposed to be on that bus. I'd stayed home sick that day. Fever, strep. Pure luck. I stared at the bracelet in the case, heart pounding. "Where'd that come from?" I asked the woman. She squinted. "Donation box last week, I think. Might have been from the Parsons attic. They're clearing out. I paid in cash. Didn't wait for a receipt." Outside, I stood beneath the early evening sky, holding that bracelet like it was radioactive. It was worn, but intact. Scratch across the music note. The J slightly bent. I turned it over and saw the initials etched underneath. J.D. Janie Delcourt. I sat in my car with the engine off for nearly 20 minutes. That bracelet, it wasn't something you donated. Not Janie, not her. If it turned up now, someone knew something. Someone had lied. I opened the Notes app on my phone and typed it all out. Just the basics. Missing October 2007. Bear Hollow field trip. 14 students, 1 teacher. No return. No crash. No wreck. Janie Delcourt, one of them. Bracelet just surfaced in 2025. I looked back across the road. My father's house. The only home I ever knew. Still standing. still quiet. But something in me had shifted. The past wasn't gone. It had just been quiet, and I was about to make it loud. The next morning, I sat outside the old middle school with the bracelet in my coat pocket, staring at the sagging roof and the warped front sign missing 2 letters. 14 kids left this building in 2007, and not one ever came back. That was the last time things felt normal in Delpine, and the last time I ever believed it was just an accident. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Janie's face the way it looked in 7th grade. Wide grin, freckles, the charm bracelet she always wore back when things still felt normal. The next morning, I sat outside the old middle school with the engine running. The building hadn't changed much. Same rusted bike rack, same lopsided hedges, same flagpole with a chain that clinked faintly in the wind. 14 kids had walked out of those doors in October of 2007. None of them came back. I shut off the engine, slid the bracelet into my coat pocket, and walked inside. The front office had been updated. Digital check-in system, newer floors, brighter lighting, but the woman behind the counter still looked up with that small-town mix of politeness and suspicion. "Can I help you, Claire Wren? I used to go here. Class of 2008. My dad taught shop." Her face softened. "Oh, Mr. Wren." "Yeah, he retired a few years ago." "How's he doing?" Slowing down. "I'm back in town helping out." She nodded. "Welcome back." I paused. I was hoping to look at some old records. Yearbooks, maybe student lists from around 2007. Her expression changed. Not cold, but cautious. "What for?" "I'm writing something I said. Personal project. I missed the Bear Hollow field trip. I was out sick." The silence that followed was heavier than it should have been. She lowered her voice. "We don't really keep that material anymore. There was a purge, some kind of privacy audit. A lot got tossed. I didn't say anything, just waited." Finally, she glanced down the hall and then back at me. "You looking for someone in particular, Janie Delcourt?" Her eyes flicked to my coat pocket as if she could see the bracelet through it. "I remember her," she said softly. "Sweet girl. Always wore that little bracelet. Music note charm." I nodded. "I found it," I said. "In a thrift store. Yesterday." She blinked, then looked toward the back hallway. "We have a cabinet in storage. Some old yearbooks and student directories. It's not organized, but if you want to take a look." I followed her down a narrow hallway that still smelled faintly of dry erase markers and school pizza. The metal cabinet sat beside a fire extinguisher, dented and locked with a broken latch. She opened it and stepped back. "Take your time." Inside the shelves were stacked with binders and plastic-wrapped yearbooks. I pulled out the 2006-2007 edition and flipped to the 7th grade section. There she was, Janie. Hair in twin braids, big smile, just a regular kid. I stared at the photo for a long time, then reached for a file marked Transportation. Inside was a typed directory of bus assignments, room numbers, routes, names. Bus 12, October 12, 2007. The student list was blacked out, completely redacted, even the teacher's name just a faint imprint left where ink used to be. Someone had gone through that file by hand, covered every name. I snapped a photo. "Find what you needed," the receptionist called from down the hall. Some of it I said. Outside in my car, I stared at the photo. No names, no records, but at the top of the page, Bus 12, Bear Hollow Trip, October 12, 2007. Chaperone A. Baird. I didn't remember him, so I searched. Nothing came up. No faculty listings, no credentials on the Vermont Teaching Registry, no obituary, no social media. It was like he'd never existed. Back at my dad's house, I pulled an old file folder from the bottom of a desk drawer. Years ago, I'd clipped every article I could find about the disappearance. Local papers, state releases, even a blog post or two. They all said the same thing. Mechanical failure, no GPS. Probably lost in the mountains. But I remembered hearing something back then about a trailhead. A wrong turn. So I went digging. The library's microfiche room still had archived council documents and digital scans of parent newsletters. It took hours, but I found it. An itinerary from October 10th, 2007. Departure, 7:45 a.m. Delpine Middle School. Arrival, 8:30 a.m. Bear Hollow Preserve via Route 6A turnoff at Deer Path Trail. That's where the GPS must have cut out. I printed the map and drove. Route 6A was quiet, winding through dense pine. The sky had gone gray and the road narrowed into patchy asphalt. When I reached the turnoff for Deer Path Trail, the sign was rotted and nearly swallowed by ivy. No welcome signs, no posted markers. I parked the car off the shoulder, grabbed a flashlight, and walked. The trail was barely there. Just gravel and mud and fallen branches. It didn't feel like a preserve. It felt like something the land wanted to forget. After about 20 minutes, the trail split. One path had a faded no trespassing sign. The other looked abandoned, no markings at all. I followed the unmarked one. 10 minutes later, I stepped into a clearing, wide, flat, ringed with trees that looked half dead. In the center was a slab of concrete, stained, cracked. At first I thought it was a foundation, maybe an old ranger station. But then I saw it a rusted pole sticking out of the center like a broken antenna. And at the base, carved into the concrete, almost buried in moss, BHP 27, Bear Hollow Preserve Site 27. I took photos, slowly, quietly. Something about the air felt wrong, like it remembered something I wasn't supposed to. And then, I wasn't alone. A man stood at the edge of the trees, middle-aged, heavy coat, holding a shovel. We locked eyes. "Are you lost?" he called out. I didn't answer at first. Then I said, "Just hiking. Trail's closed. I didn't see a sign." He stepped forward. "Not fast, just close enough. Nobody's supposed to be back here. It's not safe." I told him my name, told him I used to live here, told him I was looking into the Bear Hollow disappearance. He stopped, then nodded. "Tom Granger," he said. "I was on the search team back then. I asked if they ever found anything." "No," he said. "Not officially." But then he looked back at the trees. "You want to talk?" he asked. "Not here." We walked in silence. 10 minutes through woods that felt like they hadn't heard a voice in years. When we reached his truck, he lit a cigarette, hands shaking. "They told us to stop," he said. Third day, state pulled the dogs. Feds said it was a lost cause. I asked him about the tracks. He nodded. We saw them. One set veering off the main road. Next morning, they were gone. Like someone scrubbed them. I told him about the concrete slab, BHP 27. He flinched. That was one of the sites. Back in the 80s, they used Bear Hollow for testing. Psychological, maybe chemical. Shut it down in 89. Or that's what they said. Then he looked at me. When that bus disappeared, he said there was no distress call, no emergency beacon. The transponder just stopped. I asked if he remembered Alan Baird. Tom nodded slowly. "Yeah. New hire. Never made friends. After the bus went missing, he didn't show to the staff meeting. Never saw him again. That night I wrote everything down. Bus 12, Alan Baird. Transponder lost near Deer Path Trail. Concrete site BHP 27 located in woods. No record of Baird post-2007. Possible connection to Bear Hollow project. When I got home, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. You're asking dangerous questions. Let it go. I stared at the message, then looked at the bracelet on the table. The one Janie never should have been able to give away. This wasn't over. And whatever had happened back then, it wasn't buried. It had just gone quiet. The message sat on my phone like a live wire. You're asking dangerous questions. Let it go. No number. No punctuation. I didn't respond. I didn't delete it either. That night I sat at my dad's kitchen table and pulled out a storage box he hadn't touched in years. Mostly lesson plans, rusted tools, and substitute forms. Near the bottom was a folder marked Personnel 2007. I wasn't sure what I was hoping to find, but there he was. Alan Baird, interim science teacher. Hired September 2007. Terminated October 2007. No forwarding address, no exit interview. Just a stamped line at the bottom. File closed. Do not pursue. The same week, the bus vanished. I checked his license next Vermont's educator database. Nothing. No record he'd ever been certified. I searched every variation I could think of. Alan Baird Delpine. Alan Baird teacher. Alan Baird missing. All dead ends. Except one. A cached thread on a defunct message board. Someone had posted, saw a guy who looked like him near Bear Hollow in 2008. Looked messed up, said, they're not gone. They're underneath. When I clicked the link, the page was gone. I took a screenshot anyway. The next morning, I called the Department of Transportation. I didn't think they'd actually respond. But just before 10 a.m., I got a call back. A man named Drew Langley, Vermont State DOT. You asked about school bus GPS logs. Yeah, specifically bus 12 from Delpine Middle, October 12, 2007. He cleared his throat. We didn't have statewide tracking back then, but that fleet had been upgraded in 2006. Bus 12 did have a basic transponder. I waited. It transmitted normally until 8:14 a.m. That's when it stopped. Stopped how signal just went dark. No warning. No power down code. It was like someone yanked the unit out mid-transmission. Where was the last ping? He gave me coordinates just past the Deer Path trail fork. Exactly where I'd found the concrete slab. But then he hesitated. There's one more thing, he said. You're probably not going to like it. He pulled up an archived anomaly report. Next day, October 13th, 3:17 a.m. Same bus ID pinged again, 15 miles north, near a decommissioned rail station. I blinked. How's that possible? It shouldn't be, he said. The official record flagged it as a system glitch. But glitches don't move locations. He emailed me the data. The screenshot showed a satellite view of a forested depot long abandoned. I searched the address. No street view. No recent activity. The only public record was from a zoning permit dated 1981, labeled Emergency Transfer Site, Rail Authority, or maybe a drop point. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not my dad, not Tom, not the woman from the school office. I drove north past the old paper mill and down into the valley where gravel roads outnumbered paved ones. Signal cut out around mile 10. The trees grew thicker, taller. Eventually the road ended. Beyond the trees, the station appeared. Chain-link fencing half collapsed. Tracks rusted over. A small shed leaned at the edge of the clearing. I parked along the tree line and approached on foot. The air smelled damp, old metal and earth. The shed door was unlocked. Inside, dust, silence, and something else. Tire tracks. Faint but still there. They vanished beneath a trap door bolted shut. A snapped chain hung from the latch. I crouched, took photos of everything, and that's when I heard it. A soft crack like branches breaking, then footsteps on gravel. I froze, pressed my back to the wall. The steps paused just outside. A voice low male, deliberate. "You shouldn't be here." I didn't move, didn't respond. After a few seconds, the footsteps shifted and faded. Whoever it was didn't come inside. They didn't need to. They just wanted me to know I wasn't alone. Back in the car, I drove fast, no music, no headlights, until I hit pavement. At the next gas station, I rechecked my phone. No signal. I uploaded everything to a secure folder titled Field Trip Restricted. GPS logs, shed photos, backup notes, all of it. Then I added a new entry to my notebook. 3:17 a.m. Ping, location defunct rail yard, visual confirmation of vehicle activity, unknown male observed, potential surveillance. It was starting to add up. Too many records gone. Too many people erased. But the bracelet still sat in my coat pocket. Real, tangible, unexplained. And I knew someone else must have seen something. I remembered a name from my dad's notes. Ray Alvarez. He'd been a substitute bus driver back then. There was a note by his file, no longer needed after B12 incident. Paid out. Nobody paid out substitutes. I asked around. Eventually found someone who knew him, Pete, a retired mechanic my dad used to play poker with. "Ray's still around," Pete said. "Trailer park outside Rutland." I drove up the next morning. The place was quiet. Wind chimes on the porch, a cooler by the steps. Ray opened the door, shirtless, blinking hard like he hadn't had his coffee yet. "You're Wren's kid?" he asked. "I am." He didn't ask why I was there, just waved me in. We sat in his living room couch cushions, worn flat TV, playing some old western at low volume. "You're asking about the bus," he said. I nodded and showed him the grainy still from the VHS tape, the one with Alan Baird behind the wheel. Ray leaned forward. "Yeah, that's him. Baird. Hired out of nowhere. Didn't come through our office. Wasn't union. Just showed up that week. Was he supposed to drive that day?" Ray shook his head. "Bus 12 was assigned to Dale Marks, 10 years on the job. But that morning, Dale gets a voicemail. Blocked number. Says he's off the route. No reason given. Did he report it?" "Yeah. To the union. Made a stink." But next thing I know, Dale's reassigned to a training desk in Montpelier. Payout. NDA. Ray got up and came back with a clipboard wrapped in plastic. "I kept this," he said. Didn't trust what was going on. It was a printed roster. October 12th, 2007. Bus 12 reassigned. Initialed A. Baird. No check-in, no mileage log, no safety form. He'd bypassed the system. Ray looked tired. "You think those kids are still out there?" I didn't answer. I just took a photo of the clipboard and added it to the folder. As I drove back through Delpine, I passed the school again. Sunlight hitting the broken letters on the sign. They'd erased the names, but I was still here. And I wasn't done. After talking with Ray, I went home and laid everything out again. The redacted school records. The GPS ping that disappeared near Deer Path Trail. The rail yard 15 miles north. Alan Baird's name on a driver log he never should have been on. It wasn't just a question anymore. Something had been put in motion back then, and someone had made sure it stayed buried. I stayed up until just after 3 a.m. writing it all down. A timeline. A list of names. Locations. Missing records. By then my father had already gone to bed. The house had settled into that deep middle-of-the-night quiet, and still I couldn't let it go. Every time I tried to stop, something pulled at me like I was following a thread I couldn't see, but somehow still felt. The next day I drove to the Delpine Library. I'd been there once or twice as a kid, mostly for school projects I never finished. But now it felt different. More like a vault. The archives room was tucked in the back. 2 metal file cabinets, a wall of binders, and several plastic tubs filled with loose documents. It smelled like old paper and carpet glue. I started with the Town Council minutes 2007. The meetings around October 12th were missing. Just gone. Pages torn out. Not misfiled. Not misdated. Ripped from the spine. But earlier entries were still intact. August, September. And that's where I found it. Approval to renew restricted lease with depth of environmental testing. Bear Hollow parcel BHP27. Same code I'd found carved into the concrete slab. If you're here now, that means someone else made it. I didn't answer right away. Then I said Nora. His eyes flicked back to mine. She remembered she never forgot. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he stood, walked over to a corner shelf and pulled down a binder. Not labeled, worn at the edges. He laid it flat on the table and opened to a page near the middle. A hand-drawn map. No titles, no scale, just terrain. Hills, buildings, trails. I know where the others might have gone, he said. At least where they were sent after the fire. I looked at him. What fire? There was an uprising. Some of the kids were older by then. They set part of the place on fire. The ones in charge panicked, broke everything apart, scattered us. The younger ones were moved, split up, renamed, buried under new lives. He tapped a point on the map. This was the original site, the first sanctuary. I can take you there. We left at first light. Not at the school. The trip shouldn't have happened. Outside the library, I was stopped by a man walking a dog. Late 70s, long gray coat, heavy boots. "You're Dan Wren's daughter," he said. I nodded. "Claire." He didn't smile. "You're the one poking around again, digging up ghosts. I'm trying to understand what happened." "You don't need to." His voice was low. "All you're gonna do is wake up the wrong people." Then he walked off. Didn't even wait for me to respond. Back home, I spread everything across the kitchen table. The files, the maps, the VHS still. Ray's driver log. Then I sat down and started a new page in my notebook. Investigation log. BHP27 lease approved prior to October 12, 2007. Site listed as restricted. Third-party use. Field trip scheduled during blackout period. Town council meeting minutes missing. Newspaper confirms 3-year closure. Public was not informed. School board withheld risk. Driver reassigned without formal check-in. Alan Baird's records missing. Students' names redacted from files. At the top, I circled one word. Why? I was still staring at it when my phone buzzed. Blocked number. One new text. "You're not just stirring the past. You're walking into it." No signature. I checked the porch. Nothing. But I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared. Because it confirmed something I hadn't said out loud yet. Whoever erased those names, they hadn't gone anywhere. And now they knew I was looking. The next morning, I went into the hallway and opened the bottom drawer of my dad's old filing cabinet. He'd taught at Delpine Middle for over a decade. If anyone had files that escaped the purge, it would be him. The drawer was packed with lesson plans, photocopied tool diagrams, and scraps of paper with faded pencil notes. Tucked in the back was a thin blue folder. Staff assignments, 2007. I flipped through each page. Science Department Gym Administration Support Staff. Alan Baird was listed last. Interim Science. Hired 907. Terminated 1007. No final report. No exit interview. File closed. That was it. No reason. No follow-up. I checked again. Still no address. No emergency contact. He didn't just disappear after the trip. He disappeared from the system. I searched one more time, this time using every tool I had. Teaching credentials, DMV databases, online forums. Nothing. But one forum still had a cached result, a post from 2008. I saw a guy outside Bear Hollow. Same face as that teacher. Looked sleep-deprived out of it. When I asked if he needed help, he said, "They're not gone. They're underneath." I tried to reload the page. It was gone. Dead link. No archive. I sat back and stared at the screen. The bracelet sat beside me, still cold to the touch. I picked it up and held it for a long time. Janie never took it off. Not for Jim, not for sleepovers. Not once. She wouldn't have left it behind. Not unless she couldn't hold on to it anymore. Later that night, I drove back out toward Deer Path Trail. Not all the way to Bear Hollow, just close enough to see where the road turned. I parked near the old service gate, the one rusted half shut with a bent sign that used to say state property. I sat there in the dark for a long time. Engine off, just listening. That part of the woods doesn't make much noise, but that night I could have sworn I heard something moving. Slow, heavy. Not footsteps, exactly, more like pressure against the earth. I didn't get out. Didn't need to, because the next place I needed to go was a gas station. One that sat just a few miles from the last GPS ping. Old pumps, faded sign, a place no one would think twice about, unless you were looking for the last place Bus 12 might have been seen. There's a gas station about 2 miles from where the GPS signal from Bus 12 cut out. It's not on any official timeline. No witness accounts ever mentioned it. But I remembered it. Pine top, faded red canopy, 2 working pumps, outdated security camera mounted above the door. I pulled in just before noon. Inside, the man behind the counter was in his 70s, white stubble, lottery scratchers, the kind of posture that told you not to waste his time. "Pumps are broken," he muttered. "Credit only." "I'm not here for gas," I said. "I'm looking into something from a long time ago." He didn't look up. I slid a yearbook photo across the counter. Janie Delcourt. He glanced at it, then back at his scratcher. "You get a lot of kids through here?" I asked. October 12, 2007. Don't remember. Bus might have stopped for a minute. Field trip, middle school. A long pause. Then, without looking at me, I didn't say there wasn't a tape. My heart started to pick up. "You still have it." He ducked behind the counter. Came back with a dust-covered plastic box labeled Cam Backup, 2007. VHS, he said. Jam in the system kept it from being wiped. Rest of them were lost in a power outage. He pushed it across the counter like it was nothing. "What's on it?" School bus pulls in. Around 8:10 a.m., driver checks under the hood. Doesn't go inside. Parks for 5 minutes, then pulls out. "Which direction?" He looked at me. Not toward the preserve. Took the back road, the one they told him not to use. I stared at the box. "Did you show anyone this next day guy from the school board shows up? Asks if I had any tapes. Said I should erase him. Didn't like how calm he was. So why keep it?" He shrugged. Didn't trust the way he said it. I took the tape and left without another word. I knew one person in town who might still have a VHS player. Margaret Harker. She'd taught English at Delpine for over 20 years. Retired now. She was one of the only faculty members who pushed for answers after the disappearance. And I remembered her speaking at the school's memorial, the one where no photos were allowed. She answered her door in a cardigan holding a mug of tea. "Took you long enough," she said. "I found something," I told her. "Need your help." Her living room looked the same as I remembered. Floral curtains, a bookshelf full of paperbacks, spine-worn and dog-eared. She set the tape into the old player like it was routine. The screen crackled. Faded timestamp in the corner. And then, the bus. Yellow, crooked at the pump. We watched in silence. The driver stepped out. Tall, black windbreaker. No visible ID. He didn't open the passenger door. Didn't interact with anyone. Just checked something under the hood. Then walked to the side of the bus. When he turned toward the camera, Margaret leaned forward. "That's not a driver," she said. "That's Baird." Alan Baird. You're sure? She nodded. He wasn't licensed, just a temp. They hired him for science, not for transport, and he didn't make it past fall break. We watched as he got back in. The bus reversed and turned away from the main road, toward the woods. I paused the tape. Baird wasn't filling in. He was placed, deliberately. And that meant the school board didn't just lose control of the trip. They handed it over. I opened my notebook and started a new entry. VHS evidence. Pinetop Station, 10-12-07. Bus 12 arrives, 8:10 a.m. Driver confirmed Alan Baird. No students visible. No entry into station. Bus departs wrong direction. Windbreaker, no ID. School board rep arrived day after. Instructed tape to be erased. Owner kept original. I took photos of the TV screen. Close-ups of Baird's face. The angle of the turn. The timestamp. Where did that road lead? Margaret asked quietly. I told her about Gravel Spur, the service road that branched off the trail behind Bear Hollow, old forestry path, decommissioned, not on current maps. She didn't say anything for a long time, just looked at the paused image on the screen. I always thought it was an accident, she said, or a cover-up. But this looks like a handoff. I nodded. I didn't have proof of where the bus ended up. Not yet. But I knew which road it took to get there, and I was going to follow it. That night I printed the stills from the tape, labeled them, filed them in a folder marked Route Diversion. Baird confirmed. It was the first real piece of visual evidence I had, something they couldn't redact, couldn't erase. I backed it up in 3 places, sent a copy to a friend in Boston. No explanation. Just in case. Then I opened the trail maps again, cross-referenced with county zoning plans from the mid-2000s, and that's when I saw it. Gravel Spur ran directly behind the Bear Hollow parcel, and ended near something labeled BHP 27, a site I'd already visited, a place I hadn't entered. Not yet. Gravel Spur wasn't on any current map. It hadn't been maintained in years. But the zoning archive from 2006 showed the road clearly cutting through the edge of Delpine Forest, then disappearing behind the eastern boundary of Bear Hollow Preserve. That was the road Alan Baird had taken. Not the route listed on the school's itinerary, not the trail approved by the Park District. This one wasn't meant to be used, and I was going to follow it. I packed light flashlight notebook, backup batteries, a printed satellite overlay, and Janie's bracelet. I still hadn't figured out why it surfaced when it did, but I kept it with me now, like it might still be part of the story. I parked at the turnout where Gravel Spur split off the old trail road, same place the bus would have passed. It was quiet, colder than it should have been. The road was narrow, overgrown. Tree branches curled low across the path, darkening the light even though it was still early afternoon. There were no tire marks, no footprints, no wildlife sounds either. Just the crunch of my own steps. After about an hour, I passed a rusted gate, half collapsed and still marked property of U.S. Environmental Testing. The lettering was faded, but not gone. I stepped past it. That's when I saw it. Concrete walls half buried in moss sticking up from the forest floor like something that had tried to disappear but didn't quite make it. There was no signage, no warning. Just a narrow stairwell leading down the metal railing rusted through in places. The door was missing. Only the frame remained red paint cracked and peeling, but a code was still visible. BHP 27. Same as the council lease file. Same as the concrete slab. This was the site. I turned on my flashlight and stepped down. The stairs echoed, damp, uneven. The air changed heavier with that old chemical tang like hospital bleach left to dry. At the bottom was a corridor, metal-lined, low ceiling, paint flaking from the walls. On the left. Interview room, a storage medical, restricted access. I kept walking. Down the next hallway, a door was slightly ajar. No sign. I pushed it open. Inside, empty room, concrete floor, stained in patches. In the center, a child-sized chair, bolted to the ground. One leather strap still hanging from the side torn. A fogged window faced inward from the wall, maybe once used for observation. In the corner, a small chalkboard, faded words barely visible beneath smudges. She said, "Wait." I stood there, not moving. Then something caught the light near the baseboard. I crouched. A charm. Silver. Music note. Same design as Janie's bracelet, but this one was separate, slightly scorched along the edge. I pulled Janie's from my coat and compared them. They weren't the same. This one had fallen off something else, or been left behind. That's when my flashlight flickered. I tapped it. The beam came back. Dimmer than before. The air felt wrong now. Too still. Too tight. I scanned the walls. Scratches. Dozens of them. Some shallow, some deep. Initials, partial names. Natalie B. J. Delcourt. E. Thomas K. Mendez. Underneath one carving, a phrase, "No one leaves." Not really. They wait. I turned around. Took one step. Stopped. A sound. Low. Metallic. Chains. Shifting against concrete. Not a memory. Not an echo. It was real. I didn't call out. Didn't move toward it. I just left. Fast. Straight back up the stairs. Didn't look behind me. Didn't stop until I reached the edge of the clearing. I don't remember how long I stood outside. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe more. The trees looked different on the way back. Or maybe I just noticed them differently. Some bent inward. Some grew in twisted arcs over the trail, like the forest had shifted around the place I'd just been. At the car, I double-checked the locks. Then I sat in silence with the engine off. I opened my notebook and started writing. Field notes. BHP 27. Facility. Location matches. GPS gap. Structure intact. Corridor access confirmed. Interview room exists. Restraint chair present. Observation, window degraded. Music note, charm recovered, not original. Wall carvings names consistent with missing list. Chalkboard message. She said, "Wait." Chain sounds detected. Source unknown. At the bottom I circled Janie's name, because no matter how many carvings were on that wall, hers was the one I kept seeing. That night I called Tom Granger. Told him I'd gone back up the road. Told him what I found. He was quiet for a long time. Then he asked me something I wasn't expecting. "Did you see anyone?" I told him no. "Just heard something." He sighed. "I did too," he said. "Back then. Third day of the search. We heard it coming from somewhere under the trail. I asked him if he ever went back. No, he said. And I never will." Before he hung up, he added one more thing. That Site 27. It was still active in the 90s. I worked cleanup for the state back then. Place wasn't on the official register, but we knew the code. Storage, psychological testing. They said it was decommissioned, but it never really was. I wrote that down too. Then I asked him for names. Anyone else who might remember. He said there was one. A driver. Subcontractor. Lived up north now. Name was Ray Alvarez. He didn't say much, but according to Tom, he got paid off the week after the field trip. Didn't file a complaint, didn't go public, but he kept his records. At least, that's what Tom had heard. The next day, I drove north, not to confront, not yet, just to listen, because if Ray still had those files, I needed to see what was in them. Ray Alvarez lived about an hour north out past Iverton Lake in a one-story house tucked behind a metal fence and a cedar tree so wide it touched the roof. He didn't answer the door the first time I knocked. I waited, then knocked again. Finally, the door opened an inch. "You're Wren's daughter?" he asked. I nodded. "Claire." He looked me over, then stepped aside without saying anything else. The inside of the house smelled like old paper and pine cleaner. Stacks of boxes lined the hall. Filing bins, VHS sleeves, a broken-down office chair with the back half torn out. He led me into the den, sat down slow, rubbed his knees. I stayed standing. "You were the original driver on record," I said. "October 12th, 2007. He gave a dry laugh. "That's what the log says. But you didn't drive bus 12 that day." "No." "Why not?" He didn't answer. Just leaned forward, reached under the coffee table, and pulled out a folder. He handed it to me like he didn't want to touch it anymore. Inside were route sheets, names, bus schedules. 2 stood out. Route ID B12 Fall 07 assigned driver. Alvarez R. Amended 1011 replacement ordered. Driver Baird A. assigned via emergency placement. Ray spoke slow. "They said I was needed on a different shift. One town over. No notice, no reassignment form. Just a call the night before from a number I didn't recognize." "Who gave the order?" He shook his head. "Didn't say. Just that someone else was covering the field trip." I flipped through the papers. Some were signed. Some weren't. One had a district seal barely legible. Underneath was a code I'd seen before. Ref BHP 27, SHL transit cleared. I looked up. "That's the testing site," I said. "Bear Hollow Parcel 27. Ray looked away. "I saw the bus leave that morning," he said. "Didn't come from the lot. Was already on the road. I was fueling up near Pine Top and spotted it turning up Gravel Spur. That bus had no reason to be out there. You didn't call it in." I tried. He exhaled slowly. "Dispatcher said they had no record of a route that morning. Asked if I was sure I hadn't mixed up the number. Said maybe it was a maintenance run, even with kids on board." He looked at me then. Really looked. There weren't any kids in the windows. That's what I remember most. That and how still the bus was. No noise, no movement. He handed me a smaller envelope. Inside was a Polaroid, taken from the gas station's side lot. Slightly blurry. Bus 12. Same timestamp from the VHS tape. The angle showed the driver's side door open. No one inside. "You took this." Didn't feel right. Took it without thinking. I stared at the photo for a long time. "You ever talk to Baird?" "No," he said. "But I saw him once. At the lot. Week before the trip. He wasn't like the other subs. Didn't say much. Never made eye contact. Always wrote things down but never turned in his logs. I asked him if he knew why. He said nothing. Then he got up and walked to the back of the room. Pulled a taped-up shoebox off a shelf. Inside were cassette tapes, labeled by date. He handed me one. 10/13/07, dispatch record. "You'll want to listen to that," he said. "It was supposed to be erased, but I made a backup. I took it. You hear something static. Then a voice. Not the driver. A kid. A kid." He nodded once. I didn't play it there. I wanted to wait. Be somewhere quiet. Back in my car, I popped the tape into the old adapter I kept in the glove compartment. At first, just static. Hiss. Then faint words. "Not the same. It's not the same." The voice was distant, then clearer. We stopped, but no one came back. The tape clicked, restarted. Same voice. "She went down there, but the door closed." He said, "Wait. Just wait." Then silence. I replayed it. 3 times. The voice wasn't Janie's, but it was a child, one of the others. Someone who hadn't been listed. Someone who'd spoken after the bus was already off the road. I wrote down the full transcript by hand, filed it in the back of my notebook under Recovered Audio, 1013. That night, I reviewed the folder again. Ray's logs, the amended route sheet. Then I noticed something I hadn't caught the first time. A tiny box in the lower corner of the assignment form. Route clearance verified SHL MK05. I searched that code. Only one match came up. An archived reference to MK05 shelter corridor decommissioned in 1983 adjacent to a spill containment site. Same region, same parcel. Not listed under Delpine records, but under State Health Logistics, the agency that used to run subterranean storage sites. I stared at the code, then back at the GPS overlay from the day of the trip. It lined up. The bus hadn't just diverted. It had been routed toward an underground entry, not visible, not marked, but still open, still drawing things in. And that meant if Baird had taken those kids down there might still be something left. A journal, a scrap of clothing, a message like the one on the wall. I didn't know, but I knew where I had to go next. Back to Parcel 27, this time with a plan. Because whatever had happened down there, it was never meant to see daylight. I went back to Bear Hollow 3 days later. The county had finally approved a site access order, quiet limited and with oversight. Tom Granger signed off as secondary field rep, and I agreed to wear a body cam synced to the department's archive server. This wasn't a recovery. Not officially. It was still called a safety inspection. We arrived just after sunrise. 3 of us. Tom, a structural consultant named Bishop, and me. The outer stairwell had collapsed further since my last visit. Part of the entry wall had shifted, exposing more of the frame. Bishop took the lead, scanning for mold-checking air quality. But what we found inside went beyond structural decay. The corridor behind the interview room was blocked last time. Now, thanks to the shifting foundation, a door we hadn't noticed had come loose. It wasn't marked. We pried it open. Behind it, another stairwell. Narrower, steeper. Bishop hesitated. Said we needed to wait for clearance. Tom looked at me. Didn't say anything. We went down. The walls changed as we descended. Concrete gave way to tile, then exposed brick. At the bottom, a reinforced hatch sealed but rusted thin around the latch. Tom forced it. Inside a chamber, low ceiling, steel supports, and in the center, 12 folding chairs, arranged in a circle, facing inward, each with a small clip-on nameplate. Some names matched the missing list, others didn't. On the far wall burned into a metal plate session MK05. Protocol maintained. I walked past the chairs, to the back of the room. There, mounted to the wall, was a panel of glass. Behind it, a shelf. On the shelf, 6 items. A child's backpack, a spiral notebook, a bottle of iodine, a name badge, Baird, Allen, a small tape recorder, and a key. We didn't touch anything. Bishop radioed it in. We backed out. The site was sealed that afternoon under emergency forensic protocols. A state team came in the next morning. They didn't release full findings, but word got out. Within a week, 3 former school board members had resigned. 2 gave public statements. 1 claimed they were told the program was a containment exercise, that students would be exposed to historical role-play scenarios. No one believed that. Not after the tapes. Not after the transcripts. Not after the children's names were matched to files logged under session MK05 status cleared. Baird's name never appeared again in any state database. The badge we found issued under a third-party contractor. Defunct. No trace of payroll records. But the handwriting in the notebook left behind, found in the lowest chamber, matched his. Inside were dated entries. Some simple. Some crossed out. But one was written clearly in a steady hand October 12th. Session begins. Kids quiet. First 3 comply. Fourth asked about door. Told her to wait. Another entry, partially smeared. They listen better when it's dark. They remember more when no one believes them. That line stayed with me, because I remembered Janie, her notebooks, the way she always sat by the door in class like she didn't trust the room to stay the way it was. And I thought about the charm I found on the floor, the name etched into the wall, the child's voice on the cassette. They weren't just echoes, they were records, evidence. The case was officially reclassified after the shelter was processed. From mass disappearance to involuntary detention, organized concealment, no public arrests were made. But a civil suit opened, documents subpoenaed, and within 6 months a quiet settlement reached sealed. Most families never spoke to press again, but they came to the site, quietly, one at a time. We placed a marker, simple, metal, etched with the names of all 14. And underneath, we remember. We wait. We're still here. Not a memorial, not yet, but something real. And when the county reissued the public trail map the following spring, Parcel 27 was finally blacked out. No access. No public listing. But we knew. And that mattered. Before I left that day, I stood at the edge of the forest, held Janie's bracelet in my hand, and for the first time in 18 years, I felt like someone had listened. The shelter was sealed again 2 weeks later. Concrete poured over the entry. No plaque, no sign, no announcement. The county called it environmental containment. But we knew what it really was. A burial. Not of bodies of memory. Tom retired that spring. Quietly. No ceremony. He left me a letter before he moved. Just one line handwritten at the bottom. They knew. We didn't forget. That has to count for something. I still visit the trail sometimes. Not the site, what's left of it is gone, but the clearing, the tree line, the place where the bus might have turned. There's a weight in that part of the woods. Not heavy, just present, like a breath held too long. Janie's bracelet stays with me. I never gave it to her parents. I don't know if I was supposed to, but they had already buried an empty casket. What would a charm do now? So I kept it. Not because it belonged to her, but because it was the only thing that ever came back. Some of the other families reached out after the records were unsealed. Not all, just a few. We spoke quietly, carefully. Most didn't want their names in a story, but they wanted to know the truth had been said out loud, that someone had finally looked. And that matters, more than I realized. We don't always get justice the way we expect. Sometimes it's not a trial, or a headline. Sometimes it's just a locked door that doesn't get reopened, and a name that someone remembers. For years I thought I needed answers to let go, but it wasn't the answers. It was knowing the silence was broken. I don't hear Janie's voice anymore, not like I did. But sometimes when the house is quiet, when the light hits the floor just right, I see her notebook, and the last page she left blank, like she always meant to finish it. Maybe she did, just not the way we expected. If this story stayed with you, if Janie stayed with you, consider sharing it, so no one forgets the road she never came back from, and no name stays buried. Not ever again.